2017 and early 2018. Series of meetings held at restaurants and private homes sees Los Chapitos, the four sons of you-know-who, introducing a new business to their staff. Their little stamped with, of course, the infamous fake that started the current Fetty. And at the time, they held them up and said, this is the future. And of course, it turned out to be the most profitable substance they've ever. $800 worth of materials get you $64,000 worth of wholesale. This story is just now coming to light because a guy named Damaso Serrano, who flipped and is now living in the United States after serving a mere 5 years in federal custody, has been talking in the last months of last year and continues to do so. He may be secretly running a YouTube channel right now. Now, Serrano's father was a prison guard when El broke out back in 2001, and there's a famous photo of El when he was on the run and hiding out, I think, after the first prison break, where he has like a short old man next to him in kind of like army fatigues. Well, I'm pretty sure that's Damaso Serrano's father, who helped him escape and then went on to run with him and became his right-hand man. Damaso Serrano was Chapo's godson, and of course he grew up with Chapo's four sons, who went on to become what's known now as Los Chapitos, the little Chapos, who sometimes are allied with and sometimes battling it out with Ismael El Mayo Zambada for the top of the food chain in the Sinaloa Federation. And Mr. Serrano, at one time, what did he do? He tried to knock off some of El Mayo and some of the Los Chapitos at the same time. He was trying to seize control. It didn't work, and he ended up turning himself in and making a deal. And he's been doing a lot of talking. In fact, the recent capture and extradition to the U.S. and the indictment itself of Ovidio Guzman, who of course was taken into custody at the end of last year, and who a year or two before that famously was taken into custody in Culiacan, but then they came out and the military released him in a tremendous embarrassment for the Mexican government. Serrano's testimony was key in figuring out what Ovidio was doing, what crimes he had committed, and bringing him into custody. And Ovidio's sitting in U.S. prison right now, a federal holding center, awaiting, well, maybe not trial, but some type of deal. And as a quick side note, the top sicario for Los Chapitos, again nicknamed El Nini, was recently taken into custody. Some people think that's due to information given by Ovidio. Who knows? Okay, so back to the sort of creation of the M-30 Fent craze, which has killed a shocking, like about if you add up from 2019 till now, there's been about 500,000 ODs in the U.S. About 80% are the F word is involved in it. Serrano references a pair of brothers named the Maneras brothers and implies that, he says that Chapitos took their recipe for Fent so that they could start making it in Mexico and they weren't dependent on ordering it from the Chinese, which is important because the U.S. does have some ability to pressure the Chinese government, but it's so easy to make the F in Mexico with any variety of chemicals that now it seems like an unstoppable tide coming from south of the border, especially with the tide of illegal immigrants coming over the border. Now, back in 2017, 2018, when they were launching their M-30 business, dozens of their operatives were given $5,000 free to get started and to give to their customers in the U.S. And of course, took off like quick fire to the point where now, I just was reading about some undercover buy they did. Some guys had $1 million and they sold the feds 10,000 of them as a sample for $7,500. 75 cents each in bulk is what they're going for, and it's still massively profitable. Now, Culiacan is where most of the stuff is being made, and according to research from, what's the guy's name? Luis Chaparro, I think. There's all sorts of, well, what they do is they rent apartments all throughout Culiacan, which is a major city in Mexico, has a middle class. It's not that poor. They rent like middle class apartments and homes. They put a husband and wife couple in there so it looks normal. Of course, the husband is the cook, and so the manufacturer is spread amongst hundreds of sites. And Culiacan itself is divided in half. The north is run by Los Chapitos, the south by El Mayo. Now, back in May, there were some raids on the south side, presumably under Mayo's control, of F factories, well, these small labs. Probably Los Chapitos gave the information for those raids, specifically in El Mayo's sector. Oh, and there was wrappings and notes left in these apartments specifying that this was El Mayo's stuff. So this probably was part of a campaign to make it look like El Mayo is responsible for the F, when in fact they're the number one producers. And of course, back in October, they started putting out narco mindas, which basically narco news flashes that the narcos put out themselves, saying, we don't make F, and anyone who does in our territory will be signed Los Chapitos. But of course, that probably just means if you don't make it for us, we're going to take you out. And they want to lay blame on others for what they're doing, at least according to Damaso Navarro. And there's another update about what's going on down there. Lopez Obrador, the current president known as AMLO, for some reason the DEA has decided now to release some tapes and some information that they had informants telling them that back in the 2006 presidential election, which AMLO lost by 0.002% or something, that he had received millions in bribes from the infamous Edgar La Barbie Villarreal, aka the Ken doll, the American-born narco who had become really a warlord for the Beltran-Leyva brothers and then later Sinaloa, that he gave several $1 million to AMLO's campaign. When AMLO lost, he was upset. He financed people protesting AMLO's loss. And of course, his plan must have been that AMLO would protect him because he was in fact taken into custody 3 years into AMLO's term in 2010, extradited to the U.S., where he got 49 years. Barbie, of course, was the supplier to Craig Petty's, amongst other people, the infamous Memphis kingpin. And of course, the corruption doesn't stop there. Just last year, Genaro Luna, who was the head of the entire Mexican, was it the military, Mexican police? He was put on trial in New York court for protecting traffickers. He got a $10 million bribe. And Damaso Navarro also talks about that. That was done with Chapitos chipping in. As for Edgar Villarreal, I can't find him in the Bureau of Prisons lookup. Back at the end of 2022, he disappeared from the Bureau of Prisons. And this was during the trial of Genaro Lopez, implying he was going to testify against him. but there was significant other testimony. They ended up not using LaBarbie, and his name reappeared in the Bureau of Prisons, but now I can't find it again. So what's going on with LaBarbie? Has he been rewarded with cooperation? I would imagine so. I mean, these guys don't cooperate just to be doing something. So Los Chapitos are firmly in the U.S. government's sights. They have one in custody, and their former colleague, the godson of Chapo, whose dad helped him break out of prison, is giving a lot of insight into how this whole thing got started. And it's easy to think about these substance phenomenon that sweep across our country as something that just happens, but Chapo's sons, who grew up in affluence and were very sophisticated junior narcos, they planned it, sort of like supervillains out of a Batman movie. They made these things up, they handed them out, they told them give them as free samples in the U.S., and here we are. And an asterisk, a frightening asterisk, I'm sure you've heard of the trank dope that's now in a lot of the street supply. It's supposedly even more addictive and definitely more harmful. It opens up sores on your body, rots away your flesh, worse than fent itself. There's yet another class of drugs has been synthesized and discovered. It's easy to make nitazines, Nitazines. It's an opioid as well. It's stronger than fent. It's very easy to make, and it is even worse withdrawal. So sounds like a real living hell for those that are caught up in that addiction. I don't know how it's gonna stop. I mean, back in the days when people were just the good old days of just H, there was only 4,000 or 5,000 ODs a year of that substance in the United States, and we're on pace in the last 12 months over 115,000, and now with nitazines and trank coming in, I don't know who put that into the supply. Trank, they trace back to Puerto Rico. It's a horse tranquilizer, and of course, the first U.S. city that got it bad was Philadelphia, which has a large Puerto Rican population and a very entrenched drug culture, and it spread from there. And the nitazines is something that was synthesized in a lab, and all these research papers from labs that synthesize different drugs over the years, they're sitting on the web in university repositories where if you just pay to be a member of these different sites where you can look at academic papers, you can find all these new recipes, and that's what these guys are doing. So corruption in the Mexican government and the junior narcos took things to a whole other level. Pretty frightening. I wonder what 2024 holds. That's update from south of the border. El Prophet, America Dope.